Hi, my name is Victoria and I'm a certified lactation educator, but I'm also a low milk supply mama, which means if you are in this position where you are kind of questioning whether or not you may have a low milk supply and how to proceed from here, this video is for you. So let's first define what a low milk supply even is, because we sometimes have moms have what's called perceived low milk supply, and it's when they think they have one, but it's because of the misconstrued messages and images that you get on social media or by talking to your friends, and they have all these freezer stashes of milk, and just it's this idea that we have to have all this abundance of ounces on ounces of milk when that may not actually be the case. True low milk supply, and by true means the actual problem at hand that we're dealing with here, is when a mom cannot exclusively breastfeed enough for their baby to be able to sustain their growth, right? If they are malnourished or failure to thrive because they're exclusively breastfed, that would be considered a low milk supply. And it doesn't even have to be that extreme. It can be, a lesser degree of that, but nonetheless, this is essentially when we don't see consistent and healthy growth for the baby based off of just breast milk alone because they're not getting enough of it. So essentially, I want to stress that if you notice, the definition does not include ounces, right? There's not a set number of ounces every baby must have, which means, this can have some variance depending on your baby's gender, their size, if they were a preemie versus a full-term baby, and even down to the composition of your milk. There's so many factors that can go into how much your baby specifically needs for them that there's not a set number. But if you want an average, okay, a general rule of thumb, just understand that there is some variance. This number tends to be about 25 ounces for a full-term baby that is about weeks 3 to 4 of age and on, okay? So once milk supply is established and going forward, that is what most babies will on average need within a 24-hour period. And so essentially we want to kind of see, well, are we hitting those markers? Is my baby growing appropriately? And the two main ways to do that is using wet and dirty diapers and then weight gain. Okay, so wet and dirty diapers is probably the easiest one for parents to be able to do at home on their own accord. So this varies by age. I actually have a free PDF that you can go and grab. You just give me your email and I will send it to you. Essentially, it has a chart in there that shows exactly how many diapers per the day or the age of your baby that they should be producing, okay? So I want to stress that not only the quantity does increase up to a certain point and then plateaus for both wet and dirty diapers, but the coloring of poop should also change. It's also important to note that the poop diapers are actually more important and a better indicator of growth and milk quantity, like the amount of milk that they're getting, if they're getting enough, than wet diapers are. There have been times where enough wet diapers may be present, but not enough poop, and then we do see kind of not the best weight gain with the baby. So poop diapers are really, really the key in measuring this on your own at home. So essentially, let's define what a full wet or full dirty diaper includes. So a wet diaper, if you were to take a clean, fresh diaper that hasn't been used, and you're gonna pour about 3 to 4 tablespoons of water into the diaper, 3 to 4 tablespoons, that would be essentially that saturation. That is how much you want it to be saturated with your baby's urine. So if you do that, that will help you get a feel for it, because sometimes we just see like, oh, there's a little bit in the diaper and people will count that. No, we don't want to do that because that's not enough. We want it to be saturated to about 3 to 4 tablespoons in order to count as one diaper. Okay, so that would be for wet diapers. For dirty diapers, you want the poop to be about the size of a quarter. That would count as one diaper. And so these numbers are, like I said, they go up within the first few days of life, but then there's a point where it plateaus and it kind of stays consistent for the first couple months after that. So that's how you can measure it and making sure that baby is growing and having enough input based off of their output, okay? The next indicator I want to address is weight gain. Weight gain is probably the best common way to assess if your baby is growing as they should be, okay? This also varies by age, okay? I don't want this to be a blanket statement for all babies, but generally speaking, from when your baby's born, it is normal for them to drop a little bit of weight in the first 2 weeks. But I will say it shouldn't be more than 10% of their birth weight. Okay, if it is more than 10%, most providers will say that you need to be supplementing. And this may be temporary, or it may be something you have to continue doing if your milk doesn't increase in supply and they aren't getting enough. However, after that 2-week mark, and till about 3 months of age. Again, this is a give or take. It's a rough average. We are looking for about 1 ounce of weight gain per day of life after that 2-week mark. Okay, so this is something that has a variance as well, and it's going to depend on your child's percentile, their weight percentile on growth charts. It's going to depend on their full term, if they're preemie, and all these little things. But we're talking just generally speaking for a normal, healthy, full term baby, 1 ounce per day is the rule of thumb. Now, I wouldn't say that you need to be finicky about weighing your baby on your own. If that is something that you are wondering, I would say for some moms, it may give them the peace of mind. And if that's the case, I will link below my favorite baby scale that is fairly accurate for weight gain measurement. It's not exactly accurate for other things that we'll dive into in a second, but it is something that you can have at your house if you want to weigh your baby on every few days to just kind of get a general consensus of where they're at. Just know that it's not going to be 1 ounce every day on the dot, right? They're human just like you and me, right? They're just smaller versions, and so our weight gain or weight loss is not consistent either way either. There's going to be fluctuation. What we are looking for is trending and just general, moving upward along the same rate. So that scale is accurate to the 10 grams, okay? So, and I will dive into test feeds and weighted feeds, which are probably the most precise way to know if your baby is getting enough. But those feeds are actually using a very, very accurate scale that the average person will not have available in their home, and I do not recommend you buy just for this period of time because they are expensive. Okay, so we're gonna dive into test feed and weighted feeds. Those are the feeds where if you are to go to a lactation consultant, or sometimes some pediatrician offices have this, my son's chiropractor office has one, just different offices that deal with babies, they have a weighted scale, digital scale, and it's to the 2 gram, which means the accuracy is if you put something on that scale, it is accurate within a range of error by 2 grams. 2 grams is really, really light. It's precise, okay? That is ideal for a test feed or a weighted feed, not like the scale that I mentioned previously where it's accurate to the 10 gram. That's, a 1/10 of an ounce. And that's not specific enough, and let me dive into why. In order to do a test feed or a weighted feed, they're the same thing, same 2 different names, same concept. You weigh the baby before you do a feed, okay? Then you go and feed the baby on one side. You weigh them again. Take note of what the weight is, that it has increased. Then you feed them on the other side, weigh them again. Take note of the increase of weight. So the grams, because we're measuring in grams, will go up little by little. You don't do anything to change the baby's clothes, the diaper, nothing, right? And if there are some offices will have them be weighed naked, some will have them be weighed in just a diaper and take off all clothes. Either way, what matters the most is the consistency, okay? This weight difference that is being measured is the intake of milk, right? Because that's the only thing that's changed. So the intake of milk is essentially 1 gram is equivalent to 1 milliliter of milk. And we know 30 milliliters is equivalent to 1 ounce. So this is a really great way to measure how many ounces or milliliters your baby is getting in terms of your milk. And so even though this is just one feed, this is a good average, a good snapshot of what each feed is like. This is a really good measure because some feeds will be larger at different times of the day and some will be smaller. And so it's, again, just one feed, but it's a good average because the variance isn't that significantly large in terms of what your baby will be getting per feed. So this is a good snapshot of how much your baby is getting in and where your supply is at. Again, going back to that, knowing that the average, amount that your baby needs at about 3 to 4 weeks and on will be about 25 ounces of milk. And so if you have 8 feeds in a day, you just have to multiply 8 times whatever that, amount was from that feed. And you're gonna get a rough estimate of how much your baby's consuming. I do want to highlight and reiterate that from 3 to 4 weeks on, it's 25 ounces, but that means like up until you start solids, right? Your milk actually changes over time. So you do not need to worry about your baby getting more milk after 1 month of age, 2 months of age, 3 months of age. all the way up until you start introducing some type of solid food. That milk is all that your baby's going to need. It's the nutrient composition and the profile of the milk that changes, where it still meets your baby's needs even though the volume doesn't go up, because the human body's pretty cool. So that is a test feed or a weighted feed. They're my favorite, but I know not everybody has access to those. It is something that I would really encourage if you are ever unsure, or if you think that you are dealing with a weight gain issue. And again, if you are going to be weighing your baby on your own with that digital scale at home, then I would say you don't need to do it more than every 2, 3, 4 days. If you're being really, really stressed out about it, because if you're working with a lactation consultant or a pediatrician or anything like that, and they are having you go and get weekly weight checks or something like that, that's typically enough to measure growth. From that 1 week check-in, you can make adjustments on supplementation if needed, or decide if you are making enough milk at that point in order to be able to keep them on a healthy weight gain. So a 1 week difference is usually not usually that's an appropriate amount of time. The only time that isn't is in the very first week or so, first 2 weeks. You will find that most of your providers are doing weight checks every 3 to 4 days anyway. So I just want to stress that, because that is something that some people might have questions about, if they need to worry about getting a scale. You don't need to, and especially if you're doing a test feed or a weighted feed and you are tracking baby's weight in conjunction with that. But otherwise, you are totally welcome to, if it gives you the peace of mind like it gave me. So the only other thing I want to highlight is a baby's temperament can vary. And while by no means is this an exclusive indicator of they're getting enough milk, it can give you supporting evidence if that is the case or not, right? And I will give examples of how this may be. So if you have a baby who's jaundice, they might be really sleepy at the breast. And that's normal with jaundice, because that is one of the symptoms. But unfortunately, we can confuse that with being satisfied and content because they fell asleep, right? They got enough milk and now they're happy and they're gonna go off to a nap. Well, that may not be the case. They might be too tired or fatigued to be able to continue eating. And so what we really want to fall on is these other numbers, right? The diapers, the weight gain, the test feeds. Those are gonna be way better measures if your baby's getting enough, okay, than just watching your babies for their cues. Their cues are important. But I do want to address that is only one piece of the equation to consider. Now, if all of these other things are great, diaper's good, weight gain's good, all of those things are great, and your baby is falling asleep after a feed, then guess what? They probably are full and content and all things are good. But, there is also the alternative where, a baby might be really fussy, and it may be because they're hungry. It may also be due to other symptoms that are bothering them. So just really fall back on the first indicators that I outlined in order to judge baby's temperament, because if they are colicky, but the weight gain's good and the diaper's there, not saying that colic is something that should be dismissed by any means. It is, if your provider tells you colic happens, it's normal, to get through it. I really want you to get a second opinion, because there's usually something going on. But that is an example where baby might be really fussy, and one of the questions you might be having is my baby getting enough? And if the other numbers are there, then essentially you can be reassured that your baby is growing healthily. There's just something else bothering them. There's something else that you need to figure out and get to the bottom of. But I just want to stress that temperament is a supplemental bit of evidence. It is not an exclusive indicator, so do not rely on it solely. If you have any other questions regarding whether or not if your baby's getting enough, I want you to go ahead and drop them in the comments below. If you found this video helpful and you think that you have a really good handle now of understanding if your baby is getting enough milk, I want you to go ahead and like that video. Don't forget that download that I told you can go ahead and grab, that gives you the chart of not only the diapers, but it breaks down a lot all these other things that I just talked about. So make sure you go ahead and grab that. And if you are interested in more low milk supply content, please subscribe to this channel, because I'll be putting out a lot more for you to be able to understand root causes and how to handle a low milk supply, and even figure out how to move forward where you can continue breastfeeding your baby. So a lot more content coming for you. So I appreciate you if you